Alright, so now we're going to take a look at two different methods that we can use to print something to the console. So these are going to be the print and println methods. With the println method, the one that we've been using so far, this is going to be used to add a new line character to the end of our message. So this idea of a new line character, this is basically the equivalent of if you just push the enter key, say in like a text editor or in Microsoft Word, to essentially move your text to the next line. So if we take a look at these two different statements, so we've got system.out.print, this will not have a new line character. So this print method that we're going to look at as well, this does not include that equivalent of pressing the enter key. Whereas with the println method, the one that we have been using, that will go ahead and do that. So to go ahead and create just a simple program to show both of these, go ahead and go into NetBeans, and we'll go ahead and create a new project. Go ahead and set this as a Java application. Next, and for this one, the end result of this, kind of one of the main things that I'll be covering, is going to be the next topic that we're going to look at. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a project that is based primarily on that. So I'm going to call this my greeting project. So I'll go ahead and click finish on this. And so we'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We'll remove any of these comments that we're not going to need. So get rid of this one at the top. Go ahead and remove this extra one right here. Go ahead and move our curly braces as needed. Move this extra comment here, and go ahead and start writing in some code. So for this one, we'll go ahead and start off with system.out.print. And for this first one, we're going to go ahead and put in a string, and we'll start with just a simple greeting to the person using this application. If you want, you can go ahead and just do it as a greeting to yourself. So for me, I'll just go ahead and put hello and then my name. I'll also go ahead and include a space at the very end. So we're going to do hello, comma, then my name, Brandon, period, and then a space. The next one, I'm going to go ahead and do system.out.println, and right here, we'll go ahead and include another statement. So for this one, I'll just go ahead and do your age is, and then just pick a random number. So we'll go with 70. Go ahead and save that. And now if we go ahead and run this, we can see when we get our output to the console, so we can see the phrase hello Brandon and then the space, and then right here when we get to the end of that statement, it does not move to the next line. Instead, it just keeps going. But then when we go through your age is 70, so we go through this entire statement here, at the very end of that, it is going to move to the next line, so that then we can go ahead and get our build successful output as well. So if we were to remove this right here, we take away the ln, just using another print statement, and we run this again, then we can actually see that everything is just on a single line, so nothing wraps to the next one. So go ahead and keep that ln there. We'll save that. Come back over here. And now we'll go ahead and take a look at another concept dealing with strings and trying to print some content to the console. So we can actually combine our strings with each other. So if you have two string literals, you could combine those together. Or if you have a string literal and maybe some kind of variable, you can use what is known as string concatenation. So this term, concatenation, simply means adding parts together. For example, we could consider the difference between using string concatenation to add the variable grade to a string, as opposed to just using a single string literal with grade. So right here, we can see we've got this integer grade. We've set it equal to 100, so we've assigned that value to it. We then have system.out.println, and we say you received a, and then we put grade into our print statement. But you'll see the grade itself doesn't have those double quotes around it, so that's going to be the variable grade. and not the literal word grade. You'll also see the plus signs on each side of it. So you'll see how we are taking a string literal at the beginning, we're adding the variable to it, and then we're going to add another string literal at the end for on your recent assignment. We're going to kind of contrast that with this other statement where we have system.out.println, and then we just say you received a grade on your recent assignment, but we don't use string concatenation. It's just one long string literal. And then we can also kind of see what the output for each of those is going to look like. So with the first statement, we see we get the sentence, you received a 100 on your recent assignment, because it's going to use the value in our grade variable. Whereas with the second one, it's just going to print the literal word grade, since that's what we put into that string literal. So go ahead and minimize this, and we'll take a look at our program. So let's go ahead and create a couple of variables here. So the first one, I'm going to go ahead and make a string called name. Say this is equal to my name. I'm also going to go ahead and create an integer called age and set this equal to 70. Okay. Next, we'll go ahead and start adding these to our print statements. So we've still got hello, comma, and then a space. Right here is where I want to put my name. So I'm going to go ahead and put one of my double quotes right here. So then go ahead and have our plus sign. We'll go ahead and remove this and replace it with that variable name. And then we have the rest of our string literal, so just that period and our space. So go ahead and add another plus and another double quote. So we end up with hello, comma, then a space, and then the name, so whatever name you used right here, plus, and then a period and a space. Okay. So if we were to run this again, just as is, we can actually see that we still get the same output. We're just replacing the literal of your name with some variable that will hold that literal. Additionally, we can do that for our age as well. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing here. We see that this 70 is what we want to use for age. So just in front of that, we'll go ahead and put in our double quote, plus. We'll go ahead and replace 70 with the variable age. And then we have just that period at the end left. So I'll have another plus and a double quote. So then for this one, we have your age is and a space, plus the age variable, plus a period on the end. And if we go ahead and run this, we'll see the same result. So we still get that exact output from before. One of the things I do want to mention about string concatenation is that when you're trying to do this, it is very important that you pay attention to things like the amount of spacing that you're using. So you'll notice that I have a space on the end of this string and a space on the end of this string. And the reason for that is because of the fact that if I were to forget these, it's not as if Java is going to just magically recognize that there was supposed to be a space there. So if I were to accidentally forget these spaces right here, and I were to save this and run it, then you'll see kind of an issue with that right here. So you're going to see hello, comma, then there's no space, and then my name, and you're also going to see your age is, and then there's no space between is or the number 70. So make sure that whenever you're doing this, that you're taking the time to actually check the output to see that the things like your spacing or maybe your punctuation, that all of that is correct. We'll make sure that we have it exactly like this. Alright, so coming back over to the slides, let's take a look at one final concept related to printing and strings. So our string literals can actually also use what are known as escape characters. So if we have a backslash character somewhere in our string literal, that's going to be used to indicate that we're trying to insert some kind of escape character into that string literal. So you can see some examples of a couple of them right here, where I've written out a statement that essentially tells you what the escape character in that statement is going to do. So if we go through these real quick, the very first one, we got system.out.print, and we have use this character to add a new line in your literal, and then you see that backslash in. So that backslash in is what's going to add that new line character. So if we go ahead and minimize this, take a quick look at that one. So let's say that at the very end of this system.out.print, instead of doing a space right here, let's go ahead and remove that and put a backslash and an in. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now if I run this, instead of having this space at the end, whoops, right here, what it's going to do now is instead add a new line character. So it's just going to route my text to the next line. So if we run this, you can see now we've got hello Brandon, and then at the very end, instead of having that space to go into your age is 70, it will instead just do a new line character, so kind of like pushing the enter key, and just move your age is 70 to the next line. In addition to that, we've also got things like \t. We can use this for tabs in our literal. So if you need to, for some reason, just add the tabs in this manner, where you're essentially the equivalent of just pushing the tab key over and over again, you can do it this way. There's also going to be the \b character. That's basically the equivalent of pushing the backspace or the delete key one time. So we use this to delete characters in our literal. You'll notice that I included a $sign at the very end of my statement, just before that \b. So the reason I did that is because if you put the statement into your program and you run it, because of that \b, it's just going to go ahead and delete that $sign. So it'll delete the very last character just before the \b. So this is one way that you can go about programmatically deleting any characters in your string literals. The next one is going to be used to return to the start of the line, so that's that \r character. It's important to keep in mind that if you use \r, this return character, to move back to the start of the line, any content before that escape character is going to be overwritten by any of the content that comes after that escape character. So to demonstrate this, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this particular line right here. Go ahead and copy that. I'm going to go ahead and place this at the very end of my program. One thing I will go ahead and do is fix the quotes for this. Okay. So we've got use this to return to the start of the line, and then that \r, and then content before this escape character will be overwritten. So because of the way that I've done this, since this whole phrase that comes after the \r is much longer than the phrase before it, basically all of that content is going to get overwritten. So if you go ahead and save this and we run it, you can actually see that right here. So you're going to see just that statement, content before this escape character will be overwritten, and you never see any of this portion right here, because all of that content is what got overwritten. So getting into these last two examples, obviously if we're using this escape character to be able to specify certain things like new line characters, tabs, backspacing, you might be wondering, how do you go about adding an actual / character into your string literals? Maybe there's going to be a certain case where you want to actually use that / character. We're dealing with computer systems, so maybe for a file path, you might want to be able to use that character. So in order to do that, what you're going to do is basically just use the / character twice to indicate that you want a literal / in your strings. So for this last one, we're going to have a similar kind of issue. You'll notice that we use double quotes to indicate the start and end of a string literal. So then the question is, well, how do you go about adding a literal double quote somewhere in your string? Say, for example, you want to have this fairly large body of text. Somewhere in there you might have something like dialogue that requires having double quotes around it. How would you actually go about adding those double quotes? So you have kind of a similar issue where in order to add that literal to it, you're going to need to specify it with that escape character. So you're going to see a / double quote. You'll also see / single quote. That's not really an issue in strings. In a moment, a little bit later, we're going to take a look at another data type in Java that does actually require using those single quotes. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the very least, the backslash character and the double quote character, being able to add those literals to a string. So let's just take each of these two. So we'll go ahead and grab each of these, and we'll go ahead and insert those into our program as well. Again, making sure that I clean up the quotes around this. And then we'll also grab this one. Okay. So of course for this last one, make sure that if you're copying this over when you're correcting the quotes for it, that you're correcting these two outer double quotes for the actual string literal, and that you're also correcting this single quote and this double quote here. And so if we go ahead and save that and run it, then we can go ahead and take a look, move this over. And adjust it right here. So we can now see we've got, since the backslash indicates an escape character, there must be a way to add a literal backslash to your strings. And then at the very end, you can see that literal backslash because we did this, this backslash right here. Additionally, there's going to be a similar issue, with wanting to add literal single quotes and double quotes. And so then we go ahead and show backslash single quote and backslash double quote, and we can see those right here. Okay. All right, so this is going to wrap up everything for these print and println methods, as well as taking a look at certain concepts surrounding strings like string concatenation or these escape characters. Getting into the next video, I'm going to be taking another quick look at the Java API, just going through a little bit about how that's organized, so that we understand that as we get into some other concepts a little bit later in this chapter.